The Second World War had entered its final, brutal phase in Europe. Allied forces had crossed the Rhine and were pushing deep into Germany, but resistance remained fierce and desperate. In the shattered urban landscapes of cities like Cologne, Aachen, and later Berlin, a new and deadly threat emerged: the German sniper. Camouflaged, patient, and operating from the labyrinth of ruined buildings, these marksmen were not just soldiers, but psychological weapons. They could halt the advance of an entire company, pin down troops for hours, and instill a paralyzing fear with a single, unseen shot that seemed to come from nowhere. For the advancing American and British infantry, every windowless frame, every pile of rubble, every dark attic opening became a potential death trap. Clearing these positions was slow, costly, and nerve-wracking. Traditional counter-sniper tactics, using artillery to level suspicious buildings or sending men on deadly reconnaissance missions, were inefficient and collateral damage was high. They needed a solution that was as ingenious as the threat they faced. Enter an unassuming British Army unit and a young officer whose moment of inspiration would turn the tables with breathtaking simplicity. This is the story of the Shadow Test, a blend of elementary physics, psychological insight, and battlefield cunning that achieved what tons of explosives could not. The anatomy of a hidden sniper. To understand the brilliance of a shadow test, one must first appreciate the sniper's art of concealment. A skilled sniper in an urban environment isn't just hiding. He is becoming the environment. The perfect lair, he sought the deep shadow, the interior of a bombed-out building, far back from the opening, where the outside light did not penetrate. From this black void, he had a perfect view of the sunlit street, while remaining virtually invisible to those outside. The firing port. He would create a small, irregular gap in the rubble, just large enough for his rifle barrel and scope. He would never fire from an obvious, clean window. The discipline of invisibility, movement was minimal. He would not expose anything reflective. A scope lens was meticulously covered except for the moment of firing. He was a statue, a ghost in the machine of war. This near-perfect concealment made the sniper seem omnipresent and unstoppable. Conventional spotting relied on seeing a muzzle flash, spotting movement, or identifying the silhouette of a man or rifle, all things the proficient sniper avoided. The Allies needed a way to see the unseen, to make the void reveal its occupant. The flash of insight, Captain Cloudsley's observation. The protagonist of our story is Captain, sometimes cited as Major, R.V. Cloudsley, an officer serving with a British Army counter-sniper unit in the disrupted terrain of the German Rhineland in early 1945. Cloudsley was a hunter, and he approached the problem like one. His pivotal moment came not during an assault, but in a moment of quiet observation. He was studying a suspicious building facade, its interior dark and impenetrable. As the morning sun climbed, he noticed something fundamental. The play of light and shadow on the building changed. Beams of sunlight began to creep into the dark openings, illuminating slices of the interior that had been black just minutes before. This triggered a simple, powerful realization. While the sniper could see out from his dark hide, anything or anyone positioned deep within that shadowed interior would be rendered blind to the subtle, incremental changes in light happening at the entrance of his own hiding place. A sniper, focused intensely through his scope on a world 200 yards away, would likely not notice that a thin sliver of sunlight had just touched the wall 2 meters to his left, or that the pool of shadow at his feet had shrunk by a few inches. His visual attention was directed outward, downrange. He was, in a critical sense, blind to his own doorstep. From this observation, Cloudsley formulated a hypothesis that would become the shadow test, or shadow method. The method, sunlight as a weapon. The test was deceptively simple. It required no special equipment, just sunlight, patience, and disciplined marksmen. Here's how it was executed. Identification and isolation. When a sector of a town or city was suspected of harboring snipers, it would be cordoned off by infantry at a safe distance. All direct assaults or patrols were halted. Silence was imposed. The dawn watch. Just before sunrise, teams of Allied counter-snipers, equipped with high-powered scopes themselves, would take up concealed positions with a clear, panoramic view of the suspect buildings. Their rifles were trained not on deep shadows, but on the edges of architectural shadows, the doorways, windows, and holes in the walls. The waiting game. As the sun rose, its light began to move. A beam of sunlight would slowly travel across a street and start to climb the facade of a building. Minute by minute, it would creep into the dark openings. The trigger, the core of the test was this. If a German sniper was hidden deep inside a room, the advancing sunlight would eventually strike the front sight post or the muzzle of his rifle, which was protruding toward the opening. To a sniper looking outward, this tiny, sunlit metal part would be invisible. But to an observer outside, looking in from an angle with the sun behind him, that glint of light on metal would appear like a sudden, brilliant star twinkling in the darkness. The execution, the moment a counter-sniper spotted that telltale glint, a point of light where there should be nothing but shadow, he had his target. The location was now confirmed. He would then aim carefully, often at the spot just below the glint, and fire a single precise shot. The hidden sniper, likely still scanning the distant streets, would be eliminated before he ever knew he had been seen. The beauty of the method was its psychological and physical inevitability. The sniper, believing himself perfectly concealed, had no reason to move. The sun, obeying immutable laws of celestial mechanics, would eventually find him. He was trapped not by troops, but by physics and his own fixed perspective. The morning of the 60, a tactical masterpiece. While used consistently, the most legendary application of the shadow test occurred one crisp, clear morning in a heavily contested German town, often cited as Gotch or Cleve during Operation Veritable. Captain Cloudsley's unit, along with attached American sharpshooters, had identified a large sector of ruined factories and apartment blocks that had brought a battalion's advance to a standstill the previous day. As dawn broke, dozens of Allied counter-snipers settled into their hides. The sector felt eerily quiet, a stark contrast to the firefights of the day before. The sun peaked over the horizon. What happened next was methodical, relentless, and stunning in its efficiency. As one participant later described it, it was like a macabre shooting gallery. One by one, tiny pinpricks of light began to appear in the dark maws of the buildings. 8 a.m. The first glint from a third-floor window in a roofless apartment block. A single shot rang out. The glint vanished. 8:15 a.m. Two more almost simultaneously, one from a church tower, a known favorite, another from a cellar aperture. 8:30 to 11 a.m. The pace picked up. The rising sun began to probe deeper into the urban canyon. Glints appeared from parapets, behind chimney stacks, within piles of factory machinery. The counter-snipers, communicating quietly, systematically engaged each target. By midday, the activity had ceased. Patrols were then sent in to clear the buildings. The result was astonishing. In the space of one morning, without a single Allied casualty during the operation, they confirmed the elimination or discovery of approximately 60 German sniper positions. Some were dead marksmen, found with their rifles still trained outward. Others were positions that had been abandoned after a near miss or the death of a partner. But the evidence of their recent occupation, spent cartridge casings, food wrappers, firing mats, was clear. The psychological impact was immediate. The sector, once deadly, was now secure. The advancing infantry could move forward, their fear of the unseen assassin vastly diminished. Word of the shadow test spread like wildfire through the Allied forces. Why it was so revolutionary beyond the body count. The success of the shadow test wasn't just in the numbers. It represented a fundamental shift in tactical thinking. Asymmetric advantage. It turned the sniper's greatest strength, concealment and shadow, into a fatal weakness. It used the enemy's own disciplined stillness against him. Psychological dominance. It broke the aura of invincibility. Snipers were no longer ghosts. They were predictable, locatable, and killable. This morale boost for Allied troops was as valuable as the tactical gain. Conservation of force. It replaced high-casualty building-clearing operations, house-to-house fighting, with a precise, long-range surgical technique. It saved countless Allied lives. Minimal collateral damage, unlike artillery or mortar barges, which reduced already shattered cities to further rubble and endangered civilians. The shadow test was a precision tool. It targeted only the combatant. The test was a perfect example of outthinking rather than outfighting the enemy. It required brains, patience, and observation over brute force. Legacy and modern parallels. The shadow test did not end with World War II. Its principles entered military training manuals and sniper/counter-sniper doctrine. The core lesson: understand your enemy's sensory perspective and find the unavoidable trace he leaves in the environment, remains timeless. We see its philosophical descendants in modern warfare. Thermal imaging. Today's technology achieves what sunlight did then by detecting the heat signature of a body against a cooler background, making concealment in darkness irrelevant. AI-powered surveillance. Algorithms can now scan hours of drone footage to detect the single pixel that moves against a pattern, identifying a camouflage position. Electronic warfare. Locating a radio operator by the inevitable electromagnetic signature of his transmission, even if he only keys the mic for seconds. The shadow test was a low-tech precursor to all these high-tech solutions. It was human ingenuity at its best, using the fundamental tools of observation and deduction to solve a deadly problem. Conclusion: the sun never sets on ingenuity. The story of Captain Cloudsley and the 60 snipers is more than a fascinating anecdote from World War II. It is a testament to the power of a simple idea, born of careful observation and clear thinking, to change the dynamics of a conflict. In the colossal, mechanized struggle of the world wars, it reminds us that individual human cleverness still had a decisive role to play. It underscores a universal truth applicable far beyond the battlefield, that the solution to a complex, intimidating problem is often found not in greater complexity, but in a clearer understanding of the basic, immutable rules, be they of light, of human behavior, or of nature, that govern the situation. The German snipers, masters of their dark craft, were undone not by superior weapon, but by the slow, inevitable arc of the morning sun and the man smart enough to use it as a spotlight. Their shadows, which had been their cloak, became their tell. In the end, the shadow test reveals that even in war's deepest darkness, a spark of insight can light the way to victory.